Caitlin Clark finally spoke out, and the words she dropped following that showdown with Puerto Rico caught absolutely everybody off guard. Just 24 hours after completely shredding the International Basketball Federation history books during her debut for the United States against Senegal, she stepped onto a court where the opposing head coach's child literally held up a poster cheering her name. Cameras tracked her every single breath, and the tournament officials had already crowned her the undeniable centerpiece of the entire event. But then, the offensive schemes drawn up by Kara Lawson and Stephanie White totally hit a massive, impenetrable brick wall. Kalea Copper decided to play entirely selfish one-on-one hero ball, while Angel Reese seemed absolutely determined to freeze Caitlin out of the offensive flow. Yet, when the dust settled on all that spectacular mess, the superstar's classy reaction is going to make you fall in love with her game all over again. Drop your thoughts in the comment section below on whether the national squad needs to show her more respect, because, honestly, that matchup felt incredibly disjointed to me. Her actual words were that, despite the struggles, they genuinely gave their highest effort, specifically highlighting Paige for an incredible performance, and adding that it simply felt fantastic to be back out there. She continued by confessing that she clearly failed to knock down her jumpers at her usual standard, and admitted the opponent's defensive zone completely threw their rhythm into a tailspin. It drastically dragged their overall momentum into the mud, absolutely preventing them from launching the lethal fast break attacks they typically thrive on. Therefore, her strategy moving forward against any future zone defense is to relentlessly push the tempo and completely deny the opposition the chance to anchor those walls. Now, let us take a massive step back for a second. Caitlin Clark had not stepped onto a court for an actual competitive matchup in 8 brutally long months. 8 entire months. A devastating right groin issue, followed by leg trauma, and finally a wrecked ankle, restricting her to a mere 13 appearances in her sophomore professional campaign before vanishing entirely. Thus, the moment she finally laced up her sneakers for the stars and stripes against Senegal, the entire basketball world held its breath, wondering if she would look like a rusted-out machine. Could she require weeks to rediscover her magical groove, or would that extensive hiatus destroy her timing entirely? Instead, she rose from the sidelines, and within 19 electric minutes, she shattered 5 distinct international world records. Not a single record. 5 of them. All during her very first return to the hardwood, without even getting the starting nod. The announcers lost their minds, shouting that a fresh 5-woman unit was entering the fray. As the stadium absolutely erupted the second Caitlin logged her premier minutes for the senior national roster. The broadcast noted the overwhelming presence of her diehard supporters in the stands, pointing out massive waves of screaming fans wearing her professional Indiana uniforms. They spotted countless golden Iowa collegiate shirts too, cementing her status as arguably the most powerfully transcendent female athlete to ever touch a basketball. As she absorbed her inaugural moments on that global stage, we seriously need to analyze the sheer destruction she unleashed. 17 points alongside 12 spectacular dimes. Yet the statistic that feels completely fictional is her flawless execution, not a single giveaway during the opening 2 quarters. Absolutely 0 mistakes. She dropped 8 perfect dimes before halftime arrived, protecting the rock so fiercely that no defender even came close to stripping her. The tournament officials literally scoured their historical archives and discovered that absolutely 0 players on Earth, across any sanctioned qualifying event, had ever distributed that many passes in just 1 half of action. She orchestrated this masterpiece during her initial high-stakes return from an 8-month exile, dominating top-tier competition while zipping the ball perfectly from Ryan Howard right over to Kiki Iriafen. The sequence finished beautifully off the backboard, showcasing mesmerizing ball movement, but the historic nature of those passing numbers actually gets significantly more ridiculous. Reaching 12 total setups officially crowned her the supreme statistical leader for dimes dropped by an American competing in their maiden senior voyage. Furthermore, it stands as the absolute highest assist tally ever achieved in a senior-level premiere by any individual representing any nation globally under the international banner. It also ranks as the second highest passing total across the entire lifespan of these global qualifiers, while cementing the absolute peak number of dimes ever thrown by a reserve player in the sport's history. 5 unprecedented historical markers, shattered in a single afternoon. taking her merely 19 ticks of the game clock to accomplish. The commentators marveled at the full line change strategies, asking what it proves about the squad's terrifying firepower when a generational talent like Caitlin serves as a backup. They watched her effortlessly drain a massive shot from beyond the arc, noting that launching from the parking lot is basically as simple as a wide-open, point-blank finish for her. The specific rotation deployed by the head coach during the second frame featuring the superstar orchestrating the offense next to Ryan Howard, Kelsey Plum, and Kiki Iriafen, alongside Monique Billings was incredibly lethal, operating with such blinding speed and telepathic chemistry that the head coach publicly admitted it launched the entire American squad into the stratosphere. Those were not rumors. Her own commander watched that 5-woman wrecking crew and confessed they single-handedly raised the ceiling for the entire roster. She lacked a spot in the starting 5, yet remained undeniably the most breathtaking force of nature stepping onto that hardwood, which transcends a mere successful premiere. It represents a warrior marching out of an 8-month darkness to instantly prove why the global organizers plastered her exact likeness across every single promotional banner in existence. The marketing executives refused to give that monumental spotlight to absolutely anybody else suiting up in those jerseys. They prioritized her because she is the ultimate box office magnet, single-handedly forcing everyday viewers to turn on their televisions and causing stadiums to sell out completely. The Basketball Federation recognized her gravity, the supporters felt it in their bones, and following that brutal demolition of Senegal, the raw mathematics proved everyone right. The game footage showed her slicing past her primary defender and instantly locating the perfect passing angle, threading a beautiful needle straight to Billings. Even though she owns the ultimate collegiate scoring crown, she remains an absolute maestro at distributing the rock, leading to a massive offensive board that kept the American attack alive. Angel Reese capitalized perfectly on the second opportunity, officially securing yet another brilliant setup for the point guard's 9th dime of the contest. Consequently, as they geared up for that infamous clash against the Puerto Rican squad, the underlying narrative was remarkably straightforward. We were witnessing an unstoppable force who had just obliterated 5 distinct global records in a 19-minute masterclass, orchestrating the deadliest 5-woman unit imaginable while millions watched her every move to see if she could handle the pressure. She completely silenced those doubts during the Senegal massacre, essentially putting the debate into a coffin before the opposition even finished their pre-game stretching routines. Everyone had a single burning thought. What exactly did Coach Lawson and her assistants plan to do with this phenom? Would they finally unleash her on the court? Would the entire playbook be rewritten to capitalize on her newly demonstrated dominance? You have to wonder if management saw her 12 flawless setups without a single mistake and realized, absolutely, she must be the one orchestrating this entire offense. It was all about waiting for the perfect moment to strike and sinking that flawless basket. The rock finds its way from Clark straight into Bucher's waiting hands. Buchers lines up that deep three-pointer and absolutely drains it, setting the stage for an explosive atmosphere down in Puerto Rico 24 hours later. Spectators flooded every single seat, while a private lens tracked the rookie's footwork relentlessly. You know it is massive when the opposing head coach's kid arrives, waving a poster dedicated entirely to the visiting star. The entire Coliseum showed up strictly for her magic. Yet the second the referee blew the whistle, the whole fairy tale completely derailed. If their debut performance was a breathtaking masterpiece, this particular showcase was a disastrous plunge into absolute chaos. The American roster looked entirely disjointed from the starters down to the reserves. Lawson kept tossing random player groups onto the hardwood like she was playing a guessing game. We need to uncover the real truth behind that Caribbean matchup. Sure, the Islanders threw out a stifling zone defense. Their pressure was intense and definitely caused some friction. However, the defensive scheme was never the true villain here. The actual poison was brewing right inside the American dugout. Pure bitterness and resentment collided yesterday evening, producing an incredibly toxic spectacle. They blatantly exiled the rookie from the flow of action. She was frozen out completely, treated like an absolute ghost on the floor. Her own peers aggressively avoided feeding her the rock. Picture Reese charging down the entire length of the court, completely turning a blind eye to her open co-star sprinting right beside her. Instead of making the smart choice, she forced a terrible feed toward the paint, ending instantly in a brutal loss of possession. That disaster class on the hardwood was the absolute pinnacle of spiteful rivalry, ruining a team dynamic. Copper decided she was the solo savior out there, acting completely selfishly. She hoarded the rock, hoisted wild jumpers off the bounce, and aggressively plowed right into a wall of defenders. Meanwhile, our sharpshooter waited alone beyond the arc with miles of space, only for her teammate to look the other way. This was not an isolated mistake. It became a deliberate habit. The razor-sharp, lightning-speed coverage that annihilated Senegal vanished into thin air. Gone were the slick passes and backdoor slashes. The Americans were suddenly trapped in muddy, agonizingly slow half-court battles yielding 0 points. The very same playmaker who orchestrated an offensive clinic a mere 24 hours earlier found herself reduced to a helpless spectator on the hardwood. Look at Copper's decision-making. It is pure agony to watch as she battles a triple team entirely alone. There she stands, completely unmarked, yet denied the pass. Still, the rookie answers back by aggressively swatting a shot away and immediately snatching a brilliant takeaway. Critics love to claim she lacks guarding skills, hence these clips proving her hustle. Right before she takes yet another vicious smack straight to the skull. Honestly, why does this athlete constantly suffer brutal blows to the cranium in literally every single match? And that brings us to the Reese situation. Spectators analyzing the live feed noticed the glaring issues instantly. Play after play, the perimeter star found open space, where the textbook maneuver would have been sliding her the rock, yet her rival actively refused. We are not talking about a single missed opportunity. This was a calculated series of snubs. Footage flooded the internet before the buzzer even sounded to end the period, sparking absolute outrage. Check out the 4 bodies positioned right in this spot. All right, count the 4 attackers, plus our 5th trailing behind. Meanwhile, 2 defenders are trapped back there, meaning we currently hold a massive 5-on-3 advantage. Yes, 5 against 3. We heavily outnumbered them. A little bit of court awareness in that exact second would have led to an effortless scoring chance. However, thanks to the chaotic spacing, the point guard decelerated to let her teammate cut through, tragically giving their opponents enough seconds to recover their fortress. Truthfully, the opposing squad deployed a highly effective defensive web during the second act of the battle, especially toward the halftime horn. Frankly, the ultimate strategy to shatter any defensive scheme is forcing them to panic in transition right after snatching a board or swiping the ball, flipping steals into lightning-fast buckets. That remains the undisputed method to break through a defensive wall. Her response to the icy treatment was entirely silent, devoid of any theatrical tantrums. Yet, that quiet demeanor spoke volumes far louder than a raging scream. Stepping back onto the hardwood, she refused to throw a single glance toward her rival. 0 eye contact, absolutely no greetings, just total, chilling indifference. Her gaze remained locked straight ahead. That posture was far from a random coincidence. It revealed a fierce competitor who had endured enough disrespect and was done playing polite. Check out this initial piece of footage, folks. Honestly, watching this specific moment had me laughing in sheer disbelief. So, this unfolds during period number 2. Remember, the second act. But wait, we have to rewind to investigate the madness from the opening 12 minutes, correct? Picture the rookie emerging from the huddle, handing out high fives like clockwork, hitting every single hand with pure, unadulterated hype, firing up the squad, rallying the troops, slapping hands down the line. Then the moment arrived for Reese, and suddenly absolute cold shoulder. Ouch. Completely denied. But hold on, the drama gets even worse. Once the final buzzer sounded, a journalist fired a point-blank question at the head coach regarding her star rookie, only for the commander to completely dodge the inquiry. She did not offer some generic team-building cliché or smoothly change the subject. It was a harsh, stone-cold rejection to even acknowledge her star's name. The mastermind merely mumbled excuses about gathering intelligence and still attempting to solve her rotational puzzle. Hearing that, especially right after she shattered 5 International Federation records just 24 hours earlier, sounds absolutely wild. The truth is already staring you right in the face. This prodigy dropped 17 points and dished out 12 dimes across 19 minutes of flawless, mistake-free basketball. Seriously, what more evidence do these people need to see? Is greater than is greater than. In my view, the The Puerto Rican squad brought incredible intensity to the hardwood, maintaining that fierce energy from the opening tip to the final buzzer. They truly tested our limits through sheer determination, fighting for every loose ball to generate their own scoring opportunities, which ultimately turned this into an incredibly turbulent matchup for our roster defensively and offensively. Our locker room discussed the situation openly. While certain moments showcased our brilliance, we definitely endured some brutal stretches out there, though facing adversity actually helps us grow. Enduring those grueling, chaotic moments on the court can truly be a blessing in disguise. Struggling forces you to solve complex puzzles in real time, and honestly, our squad is still actively trying to piece this entire puzzle together. Is greater than. Furthermore, you cannot ignore Stephanie White lurking right there on the sidelines. She happens to be the commander-in-chief for Clark, back with her pro franchise in Indiana. This is the exact same mastermind who dedicated the entirety of the previous professional women's season, forcing her rookie star to surrender the basketball and throttle down her natural, lightning-fast tempo. The devoted Indiana fan base witnessed this frustrating tactical disaster unfold for months on end. Her entire strategic philosophy literally strips the playmaking duties away from her star, heavily restricts her court vision, and destroys her ability to control the tempo. Nobody is hiding this reality, and it certainly is not mere guesswork. That is simply the undeniable nightmare that her diehard supporters were forced to witness game after agonizing game. Suddenly, that identical, stifling mindset found a spot among the national squad's coaching staff on a night when their brightest prodigy was deliberately isolated. Is greater than. Are you noticing the massive media storm surrounding her right now? Have you caught the latest headlines? The entire globe cannot stop buzzing about Caitlin's phenomenal talent, and apparently, the establishment refuses to let that happen. The blazing fast breaks, her unleashing mind-bending assists that absolutely no one in the history of the sport could pull off. Management decided they must put an end to all of it. Hit the brakes immediately. Change the entire strategy. We desperately need the rest of the roster to steal the spotlight. Exactly. We simply refuse to let her dominate the narrative. The rest of the crew requires their moment of glory. This evening is exclusively reserved for highlighting our other stars to ensure they secure all the praise instead. Absolutely. Heavens. What an absolutely excruciating display of basketball, everyone. Truly agonizing to watch. Let us examine the harsh truth without any filter. One veteran completely rejected the idea of passing the rock. Another key player blatantly ignored her wide-open teammate, choosing to look the other way during countless crucial sequences. Then you have a team manager who stubbornly refuses to even whisper her rookie phenomenon's name during the mandatory press conference. Rounding it out is a deputy strategist who just burned an entire professional campaign, forcing their franchise player into a painfully diminished position. If just one of these incidents occurred, you might forgive it as a coincidence. However, witnessing all four betrayals erupt simultaneously, mere hours after she obliterated 5 major international milestones, defies any logical excuse. That goes far beyond terrible misfortune. That reveals a deliberately orchestrated conspiracy. If you sit down, analyze the actual footage, and contrast the magical moments she orchestrated the offense against the dry spells without her, the staggering discrepancy screams right at you. Brace yourselves for this revelation. Viewing these consecutive matchups side by side reveals the absolute truth regarding the immense, undeniable firepower she injects into this entire scoring system. Facing the Senegalese roster, the Rock zipped around effortlessly. She commanded the floor, dissected opposing guards before they could even anchor their feet, and delivered absolute laser beams to teammates who hardly realized they were unguarded. Is greater than, absolutely. We need to rewind the tape and examine that brilliant sequence once more. Or observe Angel Reese overpowering her defenders in the paint. She had already secured the top offensive numbers by the midway mark of that fiercely contested international showdown, currently sitting on 5 points alongside a dangerous trio of personal penalties, which definitely raises the stakes. She simply cannot afford to play with the same reckless abandon as Monique Billings. Is greater than. Fellow shooters were feasting on effortless, point-blank finishes directly beneath the rim, completely spoon-fed by her otherworldly court vision. Even the primary bigs dominated the painted area without ever needing to manufacture their own shots from scratch. That perfectly encapsulates her unique wizardry. Her mere presence on the hardwood physically expands the battleground. Opposing squads panic over her deep range, lethal drives, and sudden stop and pops, instantly creating massive gaping holes for everyone else. The entire scoring machinery operated with a beautifully rhythmic, effortless heartbeat the moment she took the reins. Yet during the Puerto Rican clash, that magical fluidity vanished into thin air. The national squad sluggishly plodded down the hardwood, executing stagnant, predictable plays that ultimately died on arrival. Ball circulation completely froze. Players wandered around aimlessly rather than sprinting to the rim, and the lethal fast break tempo that absolutely destroyed their previous opponents evaporated into absolutely nothing. The phenomenon herself openly admitted the scoring rhythm felt remarkably disjointed and incredibly awkward. Frankly, describing the sheer disaster unfolding on that court as merely awkward is an incredibly merciful understatement. Is greater than is greater than. The starting forward is suddenly trying to orchestrate the entire offense. She completely refuses to acknowledge her generational teammate's presence, intentionally denying her the basketball at a crucial moment. Is greater than is greater than. Yet the net rating from that earlier matchup against Senegal exposes the undeniable reality using just a single statistic. She logged 19 minutes of action, registering a jaw-dropping positive 35. A 35-point advantage in less than 20 minutes, all while operating as a reserve player. The rotation deployed during the second period, with her commanding the offense, easily established itself as the most dominant, unstoppable force of the entire evening. The moment she returned to the sidelines, their statistical dominance plummeted straight off a cliff. Do not mistake that for mere happenstance. We are not talking about some insignificant, random statistical anomaly here. The mathematical evidence perfectly validates the glaring truth your own vision already uncovered. Therefore, how does this so-called disjointed mess appear live? Picture a veteran wing securing a pass, then selfishly gripping the leather in isolation while opposing defenders casually reset their formation. Imagine agonizing, static plays where the timer bleeds dry as all 5 offensive players remain glued to the floorboards like absolute statues. It manifests as completely useless. Lateral ball movement that fails to penetrate the defense or advance toward the hoop whatsoever. When facing Senegal, Clark transformed their aggressive defense into lightning-fast transitions. Opponents tried to overwhelm her, yet she weaponized their aggression right back at them, hurling the rock down the court long before anyone could shift back. But that matchup against Puerto Rico? Zero magic happened out there. That entire offensive unit felt incredibly sluggish and completely out of sync from the opening tip to the final buzzer. Just as I mentioned earlier, Caitlin definitely possessed the vision to launch that pass right over everyone's heads, landing it perfectly into Hamby's hands. And suddenly, bam! We are instantly capitalizing on a massive mismatch down low. Right? Instead of that brilliant sequence, Angel stepped into the play, dragging the tempo down to an absolute crawl, entirely killing our momentum until Hamby essentially tossed their floor general onto the hardwood, drawing a brutal offensive whistle. Honestly, keeping the rock in Caitlin's hands would have entirely bypassed that disaster. Yet, there is a far more terrifying reality that fans need to confront right now. Let us be very clear. Puerto Rico is certainly no Spanish powerhouse, nor do they bring the heat like Italy. The looming heavyweights in this competition boast terrifying defensive shifts, ruthlessly strict game plans, and sheer physical dominance that will absolutely decimate any sluggish half-court set. Just facing Puerto Rico's zone coverage stripped away the illusion, brutally revealing that the American squad's entire flow relies heavily on Clark injecting speed into their veins. A truly methodical opponent would tear this team to shreds using that exact same coverage. You simply cannot casually jog the rock against the Spanish squad and pray that Copper saves the day with heavily contested perimeter shots. Relying on such a chaotic strategy will absolutely never produce championship hardware on this grand stage. Whenever Clark laid her fingers on the leather against the Puerto Rican squad, pure magic unfolded a brilliant kickout, an aggressive drive provoking a whistle, or a breathtaking skip pass that completely shattered the opponent's formation. Yet, during those painful minutes when the attack operated without her conducting the symphony, the American squad morphed into an unrecognizable, disjointed mess. They became incredibly sluggish and disorganized, appearing as though 5 individuals were executing completely separate strategies and merely praying for a miracle. The game footage brutally exposes this truth without a shadow of a doubt. You can witness it unfolding sequence after sequence. The absolute second, Clark takes control. The entire attack suddenly roars to life. But when she is banished to the outside, hopelessly watching Copper dribble straight into a suffocating trap, the heartbeat of the team simply dies. Rihanna Jones on the call. Caitlin Clark aggressively leaps into the passing lane, sprinting across the entire floor for a spectacular and one chance. She banks that beautiful floater off the glass, immediately turning to ask her squad if the shot actually fell. Now she marches to the charity stripe for the extra point. She was absolutely demanding an intentional whistle there. I firmly believe she took a nasty blow to the skull, so let us review that replay immediately. Caitlin Clark brutally intercepts that pass, taking it all the way down the floor. Let us watch this closely. Wow. The official actually blocked the camera angle, but she undeniably caught a tough shot to the head. She is fiercely pleading her case to the officials right now. However, Lawson stood right there, witnessing this entire spectacle unfold live, yet absolutely refused to let Clark's name escape her lips during the post-game presser. So, following that brutal isolation, the blatant selfish play, and a head coach outright dodging direct inquiries, here is the exact statement Caitlin Clark delivered to the world. After enduring Copper, utterly dominating the rock, Reese deliberately ignoring her wide-open looks, and Coach Lawson intentionally erasing her identity, the phenom finally broke her silence. And her response was absolutely staggering, defying every expectation you might hold for someone who just survived that gauntlet. She merely described their offensive flow as a bit disjointed. She credited the Puerto Rican zone defense, acknowledged that their overall tempo felt sluggish, and confidently assured everyone that the squad would resolve their issues. That was literally it. Not a single teammate thrown under the bus, zero finger-pointing, and absolutely none of the boiling rage that every single fan watching felt burning within their own chests for her. It was a masterclass in pure, selfless leadership. A remarkably poised response from a superstar who held every single right to absolutely torch that locker room. I was actually planning to bring that up. Do you believe those blunders out there were forced by the Puerto Rican squad? Or were a significant portion of those wounds completely self-inflicted? Honestly, I believe we were our own worst enemies tonight. We definitely blew several defensive assignments out there, and frankly, whenever we hesitate, it severely handcuffs our ability to attack in transition. Trying to sprint out, particularly after dead ball free throws, felt nearly impossible. That was an incredibly massive victory for the United States. But what are your thoughts regarding the performance Puerto Rico showcased this evening? Oh, absolutely. Those women stepped onto the hardwood, radiating incredible passion and intensity. Their aggression was undeniable. The atmosphere in that arena felt absolutely electric, and their supporters brought relentless energy. Oh, my deepest apologies for that incredibly loud aircraft passing overhead. Just pause and deeply consider the undeniable drama unfolding inside that arena. Copper was fiercely guarding her own spotlight, desperately chucking up contested looks, just to ensure she remained the focal point of the offense. Reese continually made decisions that miraculously stranded Clark on the outside looking in, while Lawson skillfully sidestepped any inquiries regarding the most famous athlete in the women's game. Yet Clark stepped right up to that podium and simply emphasized how the entire roster needed to discover their groove, nothing more. No hidden motives, zero locker room politics, not a shred of ego defense, only sheer dedication to her squad. Yes, prioritizing ball security is definitely the crucial next step. I honestly have no idea what our final assist numbers looked like, but I truly feel we could have executed at a much higher level. When I reflect on absolute dogfights like this, it always boils down to hunting for those high-percentage buckets right at the basket. And naturally, we must be fully prepared to elevate our intensity. So, would you attribute those struggles to Puerto Rico's defensive pressure? Or were your shots just failing to drop? Every opponent brings their absolute best, but honestly, I know our squad is capable of so much more out there. That glaring difference in character perfectly encapsulates the entire saga. While every other person in that gym operated entirely out of pure self-interest, she stood alone. Picture this. The locker room was dead silent about claiming victory, except for one lone voice. And she boldly preached winning right after being completely iced out on the hardwood. She literally had to watch the team's scoring engine crumble to pieces without her at the wheel, then silently endure a press conference, where her very own coach flat out ignored her heroic performance from 24 hours earlier. Kara mentioned experimenting with fresh combinations, swapping players in and out, trying to spark some kind of magic on the floor. So, what was going through your mind dealing with that absolute revolving door of teammates out there? Honestly, we knew finding our rhythm would be a grind. The tempo lagged heavily, especially with the constant substitutions breaking the flow. But adaptability is everything. At the end of the day, that is the literal definition of this sport. There are nights you barely see the floor. There are moments you get relegated to a substitute role, watching from the sidelines. You simply have to stay ready for your number to be called, and our squad handled that beautifully. We literally had zero clue who would take the floor first until right before tip-off. You just prepare yourself. Now, pause for a second. What does that response reveal about the true character of this generational talent? Because she could have so effortlessly tossed out a passive-aggressive jab, a single smirk, one loaded phrase, and social media would have instantly exploded. But she refused to play that game. She strictly broke down their defensive strategy and calmly promised they would solve the puzzle. That kind of icy poise is incredibly rare, not just for an athlete, but for any human being thrust into such a brutally toxic environment. Yet, here is the dark reality. Holding your tongue does not magically erase the chaos, mainly because the coaching staff is clearly still grasping in the dark for a game plan. Meanwhile, the assistant coach is lurking on the sidelines, clutching tightly to her stubborn philosophy of keeping the ball out of her star's hands. And the absolute titans waiting further down the bracket for the United States will not roll over quite as easily as their opening opponent did. Those glaring tactical blunders from the first round will not just evaporate simply because the point guard decided to take the high road on camera. Consequently, this massive dark cloud is going to shadow her all the way back to the heart of Indiana. The 2026 campaign is rapidly approaching, and she will step into that arena fully understanding what happens when a coaching regime actively attempts to shrink her greatness. The national squad showed her the blueprint. She already survived that exact same nightmare under that exact same system during the entire previous year. Now, she returns carrying a massive chip on her shoulder, forced to validate a truth that should already be universally accepted. Her playmaking ability is unparalleled when she dictates the tempo. The entire roster transforms into an unstoppable juggernaut when she acts as the floor general. The only logical tactical move left is to hand over the reins and step aside. If the head coach wakes up and realizes this truth before the medal rounds, fantastic. The American squad instantly shifts into a terrifying global powerhouse. That blistering second-period stretch against Senegal put the whole world on notice, revealing the sheer magic unleashed when they simply let her steer the ship. There is absolutely zero excuse for that not to become the standard blueprint moving forward. The raw skill is undeniable, and the history books already scream her name. Add in the fact that she just dedicated an entire media segment to proving she refuses to drag the locker room down with petty drama. Drop your thoughts in the comment section right now. Do you believe the national team will finally give her the respect she deserves? Smash that like button, hit subscribe, and ring the bell so you catch every single update. Tap the video popping up on your screen right now, and I will catch you in the next one.